Welcome to Seeking God, where we consider the questions and stories regarding faith. As I begin this video, it is the day after the longest night of the year, a night that historically has brought fear, excitement, depression, joy, and many other things. And as I stand in the daylight today, I find myself reflecting on how it is when we are in the dark. Think about it. Something that seems quite innocent during the day, a bump here or there, a minor sound here or there, maybe just a little tone here or there. In the night is magnified and amplified to the point that it is difficult to function. Sometimes we become so afraid in the dark. Or consider this: a minor pain during the day, just a little sting from the end of a needle or a sharp instrument, just a tiny little bit. During the day, it doesn't seem to mean much, but when we are in the dark, it seems so huge, so painful. And we begin to wonder and worry, is it going to get worse? Will we make it through the night? The dark has the way of doing this to us. Sometimes we may be comforted by it or soothed by it, but it also brings in a huge unknown, perhaps because we can't see anything else. In the true darkness, it is difficult. Try turning out every light in your home, blocking out every source of light, and then try moving from one room to another. See what it is like to be in the dark. We often encounter the deep darkness in our spiritual lives too. In fact, I would suggest that any of us will experience a dark time in our lives. A famous mystic, St. John of the Cross, a disciple of St. Teresa of Avila, wrote a long poem about the dark night of the soul. If you go on YouTube or anywhere online, you can see various interpretations of the dark night of the soul. It has become a very common kind of thing for folks to talk about. And sometimes when they talk about it, they talk about very serious issues in our lives. For instance, I would never suggest to you that a major bout of depression, a major depressive episode, is simply a dark night of the soul. There are some of these times, some of these issues, some of these diseases that must be addressed directly. Rather, I would suggest to you that every one of us goes through some type of dark night of the soul. And that for each of us it varies in intensity and in focus. And that it doesn't have to do so much with huge amounts of pain, but oftentimes minor sorts of things that in our lives get blown out of proportion. Sometimes it's more than that, but often it isn't. It's about those little pains that we have that are magnified because we somehow do not connect with the holy in our lives. Oftentimes the presence of the holy in our lives is related to some aspect of light. We talk about how we are in the light when we are enlightened by the Spirit of the Holy. And then we talk about the darkness that prevails when we do not experience the presence of the holy in our lives. It can be a very difficult time, sometimes more difficult than others, these times of the dark night of the soul. The greatest thing about them is that they often seem to have no light anywhere, none at all. And we search hard and we try to make happen something in our lives to alleviate our fear, our pain, and perhaps even our sense of hopelessness. Anything we can do, we will try to do it. And yet every time we do that, each time we seem to try harder, it seems to bring more pressure and it brings less satisfaction. I want to suggest that there are a couple of things that we need to do when we are in these dark times in our lives. The first is to accept that this is where we are. The harder we fight it, the more we push back, the deeper we seem to go. Simply acknowledging this as where we are in our lives frees us up from focusing our energy, our thoughts, our prayers on trying to alleviate something about where we are. Perhaps something that we are powerless right now in this moment to change. And then the second thing I would suggest that we need to do is to stop trying to make the light in our lives. And we need to pause, we need to wait, and we need to look for that little tiny speck of light that is already there. I believe that the deepest, darkest nights come when you and I try to control them and they become deeper and darker. And in reality, I think in every one of our lives, we never have total darkness. We can see a tiny glimmer of light, perhaps just a simply respite from the pain, or perhaps a brief thought that we are not alone, or somehow, in some way, a brief glimmer of hope that this is going to end. Once we begin to see that little speck of light, we come to realize that there's a whole world that is much lighter, that a new day is dawning, and that as it dawns, the light increases, and so does our hope for now and for the time to come. It is a journey to move out of these deep, dark nights in our soul. Faith is a journey. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for joining me in seeking God.